So we're racing off to the lake because we've got a delivery of live bacteria coming, and this bacteria was only made yesterday and it's got a very short shelf life. It only lasts for 48 hours before it will go off, and then we've just wasted our money. So we need to get it in. We need to get it in pretty much tonight if possible. So we're going to spray it on, and this live bacteria is all part of our campaign against green algae. Because during the summer, recent years, we've had increasing problems with the amount of green. It looks like someone's had an accident with a tin of fluorescent green emulsion, basically. It's no good for the fish, it's no good for the fishing, makes the fishing very difficult because the oxygen levels go up and down a lot. You get a big variation between the daytime oxygen levels and the nighttime oxygen levels. And carp like it's stable, they want stable conditions, and a heavily greened lake is not a stable environment for them. They're not happy, they don't like it. So this is our second treatment of friendly bacteria. The first one we believe is successful because we should be seeing some signs of green at this time of year based on previous years, and we're not. So we're confident enough to say, yep, it's working. So we're going to go for a second application. Now, how on earth is the introduction of live bacteria going to beat the green paint? And what it does is the bacteria is going to outcompete the green algae for nutrients. And this is how it basically robs the algae of the fuel that it needs to grow. So the problem with green algae is it's very aggressive. It can replicate very, very quickly, and once it's got going, it's pretty much unstoppable. And because the green algae forms this layer of paint on the surface, it starts to block out the light from all the other aquatic species. So your low-lying marginal weeds and all the stuff that you want to grow. So marginal weeds are really healthy for the lake. They're making oxygen and they're trapping nutrients. But if you've got green algae overtaking them and robbing their supply of light, then they just can't grow. They will wither and die. Yo, what on earth? Way, look at that. Something massive has just spooked off the aerator there. Huge great plume of fizz. Up. Right. So what we've got here is a big bucket of milfoil. Now there's good milfoil and bad milfoil. What you don't want is the invasive type. It's not the Eurasian type, which can be very invasive. Now this is a native species. There's 67 native species of milfoil, and we're going to be planting some in the shallows today. So this milfoil has come from another lake, and we know that it was in perfect balance with all the other species, so it's not going to take over the lake. And it was very happy to grow in waters up to 3 foot deep. So it's just going to be an aquatic marginal plant. The great thing about milfoil is it's a very good oxygenator, and it's great for competing against the algae for nutrients. And it's the green algae that's the problem. Left uncontrolled, it can actually cause oxygen crashes, which will kill fish on quite a large scale. So it's very, very bad for the lake. So we're going to be introducing an aquatic plant to help balance this. We're going to be robbing nutrients that would be otherwise available to the algae away, and we're going to contain those nutrients within a nice harmless little aquatic plant, which is going to help balance. This is still going to be making oxygen, but it's going to be making it on a nice low level. So we're going to be using this milfoil to balance out the system, to stabilise it, so that we don't have to use as much aeration as we have done in previous years, because it's noisy, it's disruptive. So to plant this up, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gather some pieces together in the bottom of this bucket I'm hoping to find some milfoil with some roots ready to go, but it should sprout roots from the side. So I'm just going to gather a bit up. I'm going to get a bit of tin here, and I'm simply going to wrap the tin around the stem, and then we're going to plug that into the silt, and hopefully that bit is going to take on and convert to root. So all plants need light, whether they grow on land or in the water. So I'm going to be planting this close to the margins, south facing margins, where they're going to get plenty of sunlight. And by planting closer to the margins, I'm hoping that this weed is going to establish and develop and just grow out from the margin and find its own natural level. I'm also going to be planting it on a margin that doesn't get fished much either, so it's not going to interfere with the fishing. It's just going to be nice south facing position, doing its job and improving our water quality. Oh, here we go. That's a bit with the root structure already developed. That's great. Just going to add a bit of tin around there anyway, just to make sure I can punch it safely into the silt. Yeah, great, we'll get that in. It breaks quite easily, this stuff. Yeah, if you were fishing up against it or a fish does go into it, it's going to break apart very easily. It takes nothing to break it. Right, so I've prepped all my bunches. I'll take some weight out of this bucket. Right, let's go plant. So we've already got some aquatic plants started in the margins here. These are just something that's grown naturally, but it's just not enough. It's just not doing enough for us. This is another one. This is Potamogetum. I know what that one is. It's curly-leafed pondweed. Quite common. And we've seen this grow in the past, but again, it's just not doing enough. The green algae is out competing that. So this is an algae here, but I'm not too worried about this algae. This is a filamentous type algae, and it doesn't take over a lake generally speaking, so a bit of filamentous in the margin, really not bothered about that. So I was thinking about trying to get some of this weed planted into this corner, but it's actually getting quite a lot of shade. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning now, and we've still got too many trees providing shade around here, so I think I'm going to prefer to go round the corner a bit, round the back of the aerator. Yeah, we are going to upset the ducks. The ducks are having a lovely quacky time. They've spotted us. They're like, hello, we don't like this. I'm off. Come on, Mildred. This is where this fish spooked off, just from this corner. Lovely south facing margin. He was just chilling, having a lovely day. About 4 foot deep, bang hard here. Really, really crunchy gravel underfoot. Lovely. So I found a lovely sunny spot here. There's a few branches and stuff, but it's a nice kind of silty, shallow bit. Yeah, we've got some aquatic plants around it, but the sun's really booming into this this corner here, and if I can start the weed there and get it to spread out, then that's going to be perfect. So you can see behind here the remnants of the bund that we built, and this was from wood that was basically felled. We felled 300 trees in this area, and we used them to build a bund. We lined it with bash, and that was to create a retaining wall for the silt that we put in. There's 2,000 cubic meters of silt behind me there, and that's what that wall is retaining. It's all been tied together with roots now. I'm not worried that the bund's started to fail a bit. That's going to be absolutely fine. So now I've tidied up this area, I'm simply going to take one of the plugs that I've made, have a little root around with my fingers, and I'm just going to try and plant it into the silt a bit. It's not too dissimilar from gardening on land. You're just looking to get the base of the plant established into some soil. The tin is just heavy enough to give it a weight to stop it floating away. So I found a nice bit of iris rhizome here, and what I can do is I can just crack that in two, and because that was just free floating, it's not going to be any good free floating. This stuff needs to be planted as well. So we've got some other iris growing in the corner here, so all I'm going to do is try and punch that into the silt if I can find a hole. So iris is one of nature's great water filters as well, always sucking up nutrients. And the more plants we can have that process the nutrients, better. No, I don't really like that. It's too deep. Yeah, so now we've got some longer bits. Just a little kind of nestle into the upper layers, kind of in amongst the shod and the silt, and then with a bit of luck that'll take, because the silt's going to settle around that. The farther the spread, the quicker it will get on. And we've got a lovely area here. We've got some potamogetum established over quite a few spots. You can't really see now because I've mudded up the water. We've got, I don't know what that is, but we'll leave it anyway. It's an aquatic plant, it's going to do something. So the sun's coming round and hitting this spot already, and it's just going to get sunnier and sunnier as the day progresses. So if other weed likes the area, then it's a good bet that this weed is going to get on well here as well. Just got a strong smell of hydrogen sulfide there. That's the rotten egg smell that comes up in areas of anaerobic silt, because it's the gases aren't just aren't getting the oxygen. Bacteria can't get the oxygen it needs to process the debris. So that's why you get these stinking areas. That's all right. There's aerobic silt always on top of anaerobic silt, so I'm not worried about that. And if you're ever wading in the margins and you're hit by that nasty smell, then you can be pretty sure that that's an area of anaerobic silt. So you can see on this potamogetum how all of the leaf surfaces are attracting debris. So sediment is kind of clinging to it. If I shake it off, it all just kind of rustles off there. And I've only put this bit of milfoil in a few minutes ago, and you can see these thousands of tiny little strands of leaf are just all the debris, all the particulate matter, all the suspended as we call it, that is sticking to that, and that's what we want to see, because it's going to feed off that particulate matter, and that's the nutrient, that's what it's going to grow off. So it's just filtering the lake really. The water's already cleared up, so you can see how the milfoil is emerging there. That's lovely to see. There's a tree there, and we need to keep on cutting that back because we don't want that growing, because that's going to shade out all that lovely area that we've created for the milfoil. So yeah, it's all just part of the ongoing management. The dragonflies are out in force. That's an absolute beauty. So things like this as well, while I'm out here, this is cow parsley, and we've had so much rain recently, it's just been beaten into the lake, and if I left that there, it does a lovely job of removing nutrients while it's growing. When it falls into the water like that, it's just going to return those nutrients that it sucked out of the soil and the silt and put them back into the lake. And we're trying to remove nutrient, so anything that I can do any foliage that falls into the water like that should be removed, but that's the theory. But I can only do so much without disturbing guests. But we've got the place to ourselves this morning, so we've snuck in for a bit of jungle gardening. If you've ever wondered why cow parsley gets its name, it's not only that it looks like flat leaf parsley, but when you rip the stems open like this, it absolutely reeks of parsley. It's a wonderful smell. If this stuff was growing happily upright in the margins, I wouldn't be touching it. But now that it's fallen over into the water, it's doing more harm than good, unfortunately. You've got some rhizomes that you can see really clearly in the water here. If I put my hand in, all the little bugs and larvae and life just run for their lives. So much habitat, and I can see a cloud of look at that, cloud of zooplankton there, little water fleas, millions of them, just sitting happily in a pool of sunlight, having a lovely time. Well, they were until I came along anyway. Now we've just come across some dragonflies, and they've found some stems that are just dangling in the water, and there's quite a few couples that are mating and then laying their eggs. Lovely. Off to the left here we've got a truckload of fry just in the upper layers, sitting in the sunshine and reacting away from your vibrations. If you stand still for long enough in the shallow margins, and it's amazing what you can see at this time of year. So much life wherever you look. It's really noticeable what an incredibly good job that Peter did last year, well 18 months ago now, digging out this area. It is absolutely solid. Give us your pole. It's absolutely solid underfoot, straight down, gritty, sandy, beautifully clean, just about a 3 foot deep. Lovely. Just what we want to see. Oh, we just spooked a fish here. Huge tail pattern. This is the entrance to a tiny little stream. I saw the bow wave, saw the tail pattern, see the plume of silt. He's only sat in a few feet of water. They don't need much depth. This is warm, shallow water, and they're very happy. Thank you very much. So you can see under the surface here, we've got all these marginal rocks and loads of little stones in between them as well. And all the surfaces of those rocks are basically a natural growing environment for bacteria. Now, this is bacteria that also eats nutrients, so the more contact area, the more surface area of stones like this that you actually have in a lake, the better it is. So what we're hoping to do this winter is we're going to create some living weirs. So we're going to put in some rocks just like these rocks here, and we're going to have the water flowing over it and through it, and all that contact area is going to be increasing the rate at which we can grow our own friendly bacteria. That bacteria, what does it love? It loves nutrients, and it's going to rob those nutrients away from invasive things like green algae. Now we just spooked another, I think 2 fish, and we've walked past these fish just a few metres away. They're having a lovely time. They love this margin. Don't want to disturb that surface because that's the surface that's growing the bacteria. You can just see the structures, those little tubey things, all of that contact surface area. It's like a petri dish basically. Nature's petri dish, rocks and stones. Got plenty of cow parsley that's fallen into the stream. So I'm definitely going to rip some of this out. It's creating shade as well, and there's enough shade around here with the trees. It smells absolutely fantastic. Reminds me I'm hungry for lunch. So in my enthusiasm for clearing the margin of cow parsley that was falling in, I've gone and forgotten my weed bucket. Luckily I've got a 4-metre pruning pole with a hook. Be embarrassing if the guests saw that floating on the surface, wouldn't it? Right, come here you bugger. Here we go. Oops. So back in 2015 when we did the big dig out and we took out 3,000 cubic metre of silt, one of the things that we discovered during that process was that we had the infrastructure, the concrete foundations basically, to put in some weir boards. So there's 2 sets of weir boards, one here and one down there. And what these weir boards are doing is they're creating a differential in height of the water, so we've got a difference between there and there. And this is a crude silt trap, that's all it's doing. So we've got a little bit of oxygen being introduced by these weirs as well, which is great, but I think we can do better. So what I'm going to do this winter is we're going to build some rock weirs. So that's going to control the water, it's going to give loads of surfaces for bacteria to grow on, and then in the tops of the rocks we're going to plant in some aquatics. We're going to have the first rock weir up there. So rock weir, static weir, rock weir, static weir. Yeah. So with a bit of luck, that's what we're going to do. I've got a man and he's got a plan. So there's something strange happening here. The flow of water is coming this way, but there's a clear flow of water coming this way. And we've got a gravel path along here, and we've had so much rain that there's actually water flowing down underneath this path. You can't see the water on the surface of the path, but there's a clear water route in. And the gravel's doing a lovely job of filtering this water, so it'll be lovely and clean, and then it's coming in. So we've got a flow going that way and a flow going that way. Right, let's have a look at this weed that I planted then. So that looks great actually. Yeah, still bright green, which is a positive sign. I'm pleased to see that it's still where I put it, that's most important. I thought for 1 minute the ducks would have fancied trying to rip it up before it got going, but no, it's where I put it, and that's where we'd like it to stay. Thank you very much. Well, this is the corner where we planted the most. Yeah, that's looking lovely, that is. Nice. So earlier this week we planted some fresh weed. It's really important that milfoil gets going, gets established. And if we don't have another treatment of algae, there is a risk that the algae is going to take over again, and it's going to rob the milfoil of the light, and it's not going to do the job that we need it to do. So I'm hoping that by timing quite closely together the second bacterial treatment with the planting of the milfoil, the two are going to support and work together, and it's all going to work out for us. So fingers crossed. That's a lovely evening, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. Welcome your bacteria. Now's not the time, mate. There's the time when I need you to row like the devil. Okay. Are you alright? Well, I wish we had a faster way of doing this. I kind of knew that we might run out of time, and we're only halfway done as well, but I don't want to up the concentration any more than the guidelines say, so we go into dark. Now my arm's like blooming Popeye after a couple of days of this, left and right. So it's not just us battling against the algae. Algae is a form of phytoplankton, and any body of water is going to contain phytoplankton of some sort, blue, brown, green. We're not doing anything artificial here. We're helping nature. Algae just wants to turn the whole world into pea green soup, a monoculture. And this treatment is going to help give every other species that lives in the lake a better chance, so we can get some balance back to the place. So the one thing that's clear at the moment is that after the first treatment, it did a great job of limiting the growth of the green algae. In actual fact, we have known green algae, but what we do have is something called a brown diatom, which is another form of phytoplankton, but brown diatoms are more stable. I've literally never seen the lake this clear at this time of year. Normally it's just thick green soup and you can only see a few inches. Here we can clearly see twigs on the bottom in a foot of water. Yeah, great to see. So what I'm hoping is that this treatment is going to give us a kick start, and once the new marginal weed is established, we're going to be doing this treatment possibly 3 times this year. This is treatment number 2, and if it's successful, we might only need to do it twice next year, and the year after maybe just the once. In an ideal world, of course, I don't want to have to do this. It's a disruption to the fishing. It's quite hard work to do, and obviously there's a cost involved. So battling against the algae is nothing new. We first became aware of the problem really in the early days when we first bought the lake, and to be honest, back then we just thought it was, well, that's what we got, that's what it is. Fishing gets really hard in the summer, and that's fishing. But after I think in our 3rd year, we had a nasty wake-up call and we lost a load of fish. Well, I say a load, 13. Now, that may or may not seem like a lot, but we were heartbroken by it, to be honest. I don't ever want to have to bury that number of fish again. It was actually that fish kill that triggers us into action, really. It was a nasty wake-up call, but a lesson we needed to learn. And that's when we initiated the project on the big dig out. Invested heavily in aeration. To be honest, over the last few years, all we've been doing to manage the algae is to increase the level of aeration. I think last year we had the aerators on 24/7 for 3 months. Very disruptive and not good for the environment, not good for our bank account either. Very expensive, but it kept fishing and it kept the algae to a manageable level. Algae does not like being moved around, being disrupted. It kind of slows down the growth. Algae loves sunlight and no wind and warm temperatures, and with global warming doing what it's doing, it's just going to get worse. And we realise that aeration alone is just not a solution. It's not sustainable. So we've got to think outside the box. We've got to do things differently. This is not something that we've just woken up one morning and decided to do ourselves. We employ the services of a professional fishery consultant, and he's actually he's my Yoda. He tells me what I need to do. Everyone's got to have a Yoda. I've just seen a crayfish sitting on a rock in the margin. He's just sitting there, happy as Larry, look. So, of course, carp anglers don't really like crayfish. And red signal crayfish are an invasive species and you certainly don't want them. We've never had those at all. But I do see in the nettings from time to time some native crayfish, and yeah, that's great to see. And big carp love crayfish, and wherever you're fishing a big wild public water, you know, I see quite a few crayfish. I've even had them walk in my swim, I've even had them walk in my bivvy. That's the first time I've actually seen a crayfish in the margin, just have a little sunbathe on a rock. Fantastic. So one of the important aspects of this bacteria is that it has to react quicker than the algae can to take advantage of the available nutrient, and that nutrient is nitrogen. So it needs to suck up the nitrogen before the algae can get hold of it. It's a race and we're trying to win it. Our money's on bacteria.